Welcome to your Daily 5 for Thursday, March 21st, 2024. There was an announcement, I believe it was actually today, either today or very late yesterday. Let me see if the article indicates. The article's publication date won't necessarily tell you when it was issued. It just says opening. So, and this was an article published this morning at 7:30 a.m. Pacific time. So I'm going to link to the Verge article here that the U.S. Department of Justice is opening an antitrust investigation? Let's see. I guess if it's monopoly, it would be antitrust. So basically, the U.S. government, the Department of Justice, is accusing Apple of having an illegal monopoly over several of the practices around the App Store. Now, I'll leave all the detail stuff for the Verge article because I'm not a lawyer and nor am I versed enough in all this to explain it in the detail that obviously professionals can. But the long and short of it is that this is something that has been suspected as coming for a long time, and now we have it. And I think obviously Apple has come out and said, if this goes forward, it will destroy our ability to innovate and blah, 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 blah. The same thing every single tech company says anytime their way of doing things is at risk in any way, whether big or small. And of course, the Apple defenders and the Apple haters are both either being very defensive and calling this unwarranted or celebrating, saying, yay, somebody's going after Apple. None of that really concerns me. That's all the same stuff that, again, we've seen with every other tech company that's had any type of legislation. The defenders and the haters come out. The company themselves says they're doing nothing wrong. And whether this suit will actually result in any tangible changes to Apple, my suspicion is very little, if any. But the value of it is very much what Andy Ihnatko often talks about over on the Mac Break Weekly podcast that it goes out every week over in the Twit network, where anytime something like this comes up, one of the things that Andy points out, which I think he is absolutely correct about, is that what this forces Apple to do is explain why they're doing what they're doing. And that's why, much like any other company of a large scale, when they come out and say it's going to hinder us, that to me is a non-answer. Because this is a company that is, if not the most valuable today, because of course markets change, is among the most valuable in the world and certainly one of the most influential. I don't care what market share they've got. I love that defense. That one always is silly to me. Oh, they have so little market share. Yeah, except everybody is influenced by Apple. It's their influence outstrips their market share by such a magnitude that I don't want to hear about. Now, of course, that's not getting into legal. It's just that I find that defense of, I don't know why people pick on Apple. They have such a small command of the market because they have such an outsized influence. And that's where the benefit of a lawsuit like this is to finally see, because they will be legally compelled to actually produce documentation and support of whether what they're doing is actually something that is warranted. Because so often, Apple, like many other companies, don't want to make it like it's just them. They don't want to tell you anything about what they're doing unless they have to. And there's many reasons for that. Some are actual trade secrets and legitimate concerns over IP and process and how things are, and that other people will copy them and perhaps go after them in an unfair way. That's a concern, I guess, although Apple, again, at this point is so large, I don't know who would do that. But there are legitimate defenses of not wanting to expose everything. But there is also a value in the public seeing why a company that's at the scale and success level that Apple is doing what they're doing, and whether things that made sense when they were still a small player without a real big influence within the technology sphere, do these things still make sense? Is it rational and reasonable that these practices, were they to be altered in certain ways, would actually have any material impact on the company? And that's what a lawsuit forces a company to answer. And that is, of course, the biggest benefit of it. Again, I don't know whether anything will come of this lawsuit or not, but we're going to learn some things about how Apple does what it does. And we will have to judge whether those things do make sense to us or if they seem either outdated or indefensible to begin with. And these are the only ways these things happen, because the reality is, if Apple wasn't forced by a lawsuit to do this, they would never voluntarily give up any information that in any way could be seen as negative or, at the very least, questionable. So I don't really know whether there's going to be any demonstration of an actual monopoly by this lawsuit. My suspicion is very little, if none. But we as the public and people who are interested and should rightfully be examining why companies do what they do, the value of this lawsuit will far outweigh whatever its end result is, in theory. So I love that this is happening, and I can't wait to see what we find out later.